Welcome to What Was He Thinking? My name is A.B. Bracewell. Today I'm going to be your personal tour guide through a man's psyche. Take this journey as we explore why a man thinks the way he thinks, why a man acts the way he acts, and why a man feels the way he feels. No question is off limits, and no topic is too hard. By the end of the show, you'll have a better understanding and a better insight of who we are as men. So let's get into the next letter. It reads, my girlfriend and I were talking about dating, men, and money. One of my girlfriends began to talk about two guys that she's currently getting to know and how different their reaction are from each other whenever it comes to paying for dinner or when they go out. With one of her friends, the guy seems to get a little offended anytime she offers to pay. One time they literally got into a tug of war over the check when she offered to pay for dinner. But then she has another friend that has absolutely no problem with her picking up the check. At times she thinks that he even hesitates to reach for the check to see if she's going to offer. So my first question is, what does a man really think and how does he really feel when a woman offers to pay for a date? During the same conversation, my girlfriends got into an argument about the extent of a man's financial responsibility when you're dating or in a relationship. One of my girlfriends believed that a man has absolutely no financial responsibility towards her if they're not married, while my other girlfriends believes that a man should have no problem with giving a woman money for things like hair and nails or just to have some money in your pocket for lunch. So my second question is, what does a man think when a woman asks him for money or requires or expects him to support her or help her out financially? So thanks for your letter and thanks for your questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to answer both your questions in one response, and let's see how that works out. Now you're asking, what does a man think? How does he feel? How does he act when a woman wants to offer or chooses to pay for a date? And the other question is, what does a man think or how does he feel when a woman asks for money when they're just dating? Now there's a few things that influences a man's thoughts and his actions when it comes to that. And here's what I came up with. The first one is this man's idea or his perspective on gender roles when it comes to money and women and finances. You know, there's some traditional guys out there and there's some non-traditional guys out there. The traditional guy believes that a man should pay 100% or at least a majority of the financial responsibilities when you're dating. You know, whether that's going out to the movies, going on dinner, buying gifts, the traditional guy would think that it's his responsibility to take care of all that stuff. And that's whether it's dating or a relationship or even in marriage. You know, you might think that this guy doesn't exist no more, that they're extinct, but this is not true. There are still some guys that have this traditional way of looking at finances when it comes to relationships. And it really is determined and influenced by a few things. Now, one of the things might be, how was he raised? Was he taught that men supposed to be responsible for the majority or 100% of the financial obligations, even when it's just dating or if a relationships or in marriage? Another thing would be the family structure that he grew up in. You know, maybe he grew up in a family where his father was really the sole breadwinner, head of the household, and the father paid for everything in the home. So he is kind of following suit and using that as his example. And it could be when he was raised. I'm not only speaking to millennials in this video, but I'm speaking to people that might be of a more older, more mature age. And this guy could have been raised in a time where the man was 100% responsible for all the financial obligations in the household. And this is how he now acts in his dating life. So the young lady says that there's one friend that almost gets offended when she offers to pay for a date. And I can guarantee that this friend is probably the friend that is more traditional in the way he looks at financial responsibilities when it comes to dating. There was a time in history where women were not allowed to work. They did not have that privilege to leave the home and go to work so they can assist financially. So yeah, there's still families that follow that traditional way of thinking or that traditional way of managing money and dealing with money. Now, what I would say is most important is that the two people are on the same page. Now, it really doesn't matter if he's traditional and she's traditional, as long as you guys agree on how you want to deal with the responsibilities. If you feel that it's the man's responsibility to pay for the dates, and if he feels the same way, and I think that's totally fine. I think the one thing to look out for, the one thing to be careful of, is that a man's choice or decision to pay for 100% of the financial responsibilities is not done out of harm or danger. And what I mean by that is he's not doing it to manipulate things. He's not doing it to control things. He's not doing it to stroke his own selfish ego. Because I can guarantee you, if his motives behind paying for everything on a date and controlling everything, it will not stop at dating and it will not stop at dinner. You'll see this spread in other parts of your life and other parts of your relationships. But if this man motives is pure, if he's just trying to be a provider, if he's being chivalrous, if this is the way he expresses his love by paying for 100% of the things or 100% of the dates and the dinners, then the outcome will be a lot different. The outcome will probably be more in your favor. And the same guy that's paying for everything, just to kind of touch on the second question, he probably will have absolutely no problem giving you money to get your hair done or your nails done or whatever, self-care regiment you like to do. Now, the non-traditional guy might respond a little bit differently to this. The non-traditional guy does not feel that it's supposed to be a man's responsibility or even the majority of the financial obligation should fall on him. So he'll react different. And most likely, this is the other guy that you are dating or the other guy that you are getting to know. This is the guy that's sitting back and waiting to see if you're going to reach for the check. This guy probably has no problem going Dutch. He has no problem with you picking up the check. And he has no problem with you, taking him out on a date because he's non-traditional. He does not do things the way it used to be done years ago. And like I always say, times have changed and the gender roles have changed when it comes to relationships. But once again, as long as you guys are on the same page, he's not traditional and you're not traditional, I think it'll work out just fine. Another reason why one guy might basically fight you over paying for the check and the other guy might sit back and wait to see if you're going to pay is that man's financial stability, his financial status, or his financial condition at the time. If you're dating a guy that's struggling financially, then your offer to pay for a date will be welcomed with open arms. This guy can use the help. He can use the assistance. So yeah, he might sit back and he might wait, or he might try to split the check with you because, he's not at a status or at a standard financially to shell out for every single date. So if you're wondering why this guy might not resist when you picking up the check, his financial status, his financial condition might be a reason. And this same thing goes for giving you money for hair and nails and all those other things, if a guy is struggling financially, or if he doesn't have discretionary income where he can afford to give out money for things like that, you'll probably be paying for your own hair and your own nails for most of the time. But on the other hand, if you're dealing with a guy that is doing well financially, that does have some money in the bank or some money in his pocket, it might be a lot easier for him just to snatch up the check. It might be a lot easier for him to slide you money for your hair and your nails. So that's just another reason why there could be such a difference in a man's response when it comes to you offering to pay for a date, or your girlfriend expecting for a man to slide some money for her hair, nails, and things like that. Another thing, and a very important influence that determines how a man responds, how a man thinks, and how he reacts to paying for dates and giving a woman's money has to do with how this man looks at women and money. His whole belief behind women and money. So we live in a capitalist society, and there's some people that feel like there's nothing more powerful than that almighty dollar. And there's some guys that were raised to believe that there are some women that will do almost everything and anything to get some money. Hence the terms that like gold diggers and all those other colorful terms that we come up to describe this type of woman. You see, so this guy, if he has this type of mind frame, this will be one of the guys that probably would sit back and wait for her to grab the check, to wait to see if she's going to pay for anything. Because his main motive, or the main influence behind his action, is because he sees, or he believes, that some women are gold diggers, and he is trying to avoid being used. He is trying to avoid being manipulated. He is trying to avoid paying for everything, and he's trying to avoid being financially responsible for every date that you guys go out on. And really it has to do with his mindset and how he looks at women and money in a relationship between the two. You see, a guy like that, he usually attaches that action to a woman's level of generosity. He attaches her actions to her ability or her desire to be in a partnership. And it might sound crazy, but he also attaches those actions to her level of interest in him. Now, it's 2020, and believe it or not, there are some guys that like to be courted. There are some guys that like to be approached and like to be taken out on dates by the woman. So he'll look at her desire to pay for dinner or pay for an outing as her interest in him. Now, the guy that doesn't hesitate to grab the check, the guy that almost gets into a tug of war with you over the check, probably doesn't attach your level of interest with you choosing or offering to pay. This is probably the guy that's more secure in himself, and he's probably more secure in how you feel about him. And this probably is the guy that understands that just paying for dinner or paying for outings does not automatically means that you're interested in him. And you're probably the woman that is showing your interest in a variety of other ways. Maybe you're spending the quality time with him, or maybe you're a person that has acts of service, or maybe you're the one that's affirming him. So he doesn't necessarily attach gift giving with your love of your interest in him. So the fourth and final thing that probably determines and influences a man's reaction to a woman's offering to pay for a date, or asking for money for hair and nails and all those other things you guys like to do, is the frequency and the sincerity behind the amount of times this is required. How often is this man digging in his pockets? How often is he swiping his card? These things matter to a guy. This is something that he thinks about. Are these things that he's paying for, are they needs or are they wants? Is it something that you've seen and you want him to pay for it, or are these real things that you need in your life? For the most part, when a guy is truly interested in a woman, when he really likes her, he doesn't mind paying for things like that because he wants to see a smile on his lady's face. But if it requires him to get a little bit poorer every time he needs to see a smile on your face, this is going to be something he thinks about. This is what's going to make him react a certain way or feel a certain way. If he has to go out 2, 3, 4 times a week and he's constantly swiping his card or spending money on dinner, that might influence him on how fast he reaches for that check, or if he sits back and see if you're gonna be willing to offer to pay. Especially if you guys are going or doing things with something that he really doesn't enjoy, is something he really doesn't care about. But then you guys are doing it often. This is going to influence how quickly he reaches for that check. You see, all guys want their ladies to look good. All guys want to show their ladies a good time. But there's always certain boundaries. There's always a limit to what a guy could do. So to sum it all up, to come up with a final thought on what or how a man might respond or how he might react to a woman's offering to pay for dinner, or a woman needing to get her nails done, or a lady needing to get her hair done, or just a woman looking at him for any type of financial support or financial need. There's 4 things that's going to influence the way he thinks. One would be if he's non-traditional or traditional, the way he looks at money and the way he looks at his role when it comes to money and relationships. 2 would be his financial status or his financial condition. Can he afford to do it right now? Or does he have a lot of money saved up, or is he making a lot of money where he's able to do these type of things on a frequent and regular basis? 3 would be his beliefs pertaining to women and money. How was he raised to view how women view money and relationships and how they all work together? And 4 would be the frequency on how often he feels that he has to actually pay for things like dinner and hair and nails. How often is he being asked for money? How often is he being asked to go out on these dates? So those are really my opinion. Those are my thoughts. I hope that it served you in some type of way. And feel free to, make your own list up and share it with me, and we can discuss it. God bless.